What's going on, boys and girls? Welcome back to another solo leveling Arise video. Alright guys, we got some things to talk about here. That is specifically a tier list for weapons. Now, real quick, before we get into this, I want to make sure that you guys understand this is going to be a tier list specifically for our boy Jinwoo. Not for other characters. Other characters' tier list, I will make that later because hunters have their own weapons. I'm also going to be doing a craft guide, a stats guide for Jinwoo very soon as well too, dropping today. So you guys will get all that information as soon as possible. Now, let's go over the tier list. Now, what I'm going to do with this tier list, guys, I'm going to give you guys the breakdown of each weapon and then show you guys where it belongs in the tier list and also what you should be using and what you should be aiming for. Okay, so we're going to start off with the SR tier list. Yes, there is an SR tier list. I haven't had a chance to test every single weapon. I've had a chance to review every single weapon at the very least. So I'll at least talk about it in the sense of where it belongs. Now, real quick, rare weapons, they're really useful for two things, okay? Number one, they're going to be useful for events. They're going in terms of like the weapon event that's going on now where you have to advance your weapons to get points. And then after that, you salvage them. That's all rare weapons are going to be used for. Yes, even for free-to-play player guys, rare weapons are not going to be very useful. Now, if you advance them completely and you don't have any other good SR weapons, they're not a bad choice. But overall, your goal is to get rid of these as soon as you possibly can and just salvage them and use those salvage points towards something else. Okay, so we're going to put them all in D for now. That's where these are going to sit, and we're going to leave those there. So, these are the SR books, and again, I'm only going to focus on Jinwoo's weapons, okay? So, let's go ahead and start off with the ones I'm very comfortable with talking about, and that is going to be the Saka Blade. That is going to be a B. Good poison. Biggest thing for this weapon, at the end of the day, guys, is going to be one thing and one thing only, and that is the fact that the Saka Blade can stop recovery on by 70%. That is going to be the biggest reason why you want to use it. You guys can see here the paralysis is actually not bad as well too, because it does cause like a stun almost at 30% chance. But this is where it gets really important later on. The user deals damage equal to 75% of attack, decreasing the target's HP recovery by 70%. So this here on some bosses and some enemies later on in the end game content, they do recover HP, making it harder to beat that time limit that you have to take them down. This is going to be what you want to use to stop that from happening. Okay, so this weapon actually does have some uses outside of just, you know, being a staple in the anime and the manga. So you guys can see here, I have it fully maxed out. Well, not fully maxed out, almost there, +2. But I have been using it just to test it out at level 3. Again, not much power. I just want to see the abilities more than anything else. Okay, so we'll give that a B. Let's go to the next one here. Let's do the ones again. The bow. Okay, this is definitely an S weapon. Okay, incredibly powerful. So I'm gonna go to the bow and show you guys why this is worth it. Now, any light fights, if you don't have the huntsman, this and the dragon sword here are going to be the two that you want to go for. Okay, Lustrous dragon sword. This here specifically though has two major effects that make it useful. Number one, crazy high light damage at 904%. But more importantly than that, every time the arrow flashlight penetrates a target, increases the user's damage by 4%. It can stack up to 20 times. So this thing will go crazy high for you in terms of damage. And then when you get an A1, you guys can see here it ignores defense, so even more damage, increasing light damage at A2. A3, you can stun the opponent. And then A4, you have a cooldown on that. And then A5, increase the damage of all attacks by 25% to stun targets. Because this does stun, you're going to have the ability to do even more damage. So this weapon is a staple for light damage, especially for SR weapons. Now, the lightning sword, on the other hand, is a little bit lower, but it is more crit rate related. And it actually is fairly powerful itself. 893% for the damage. If the user's HP is above 80%, you apply Energy of Light, which increases your attack by 8%. This here is actually really powerful. A1 applies an effect that increases the critical hit damage of Energy of Light Dragon by 30%, so you're doing more damage with the critical hit damage. More light damage, an effect of Dragon Flash changes. Additional lightning bolts strike subsequently in front of the user. This decreases the cooldown, and this here applies 100% crit rate. So these two weapons are actually extremely powerful, guys, and they're both going to be very coveted. I would say the bow just has a little bit of an advantage over the sword because of the stun. The stun is actually really powerful, and the fact that you can stack that attack 20 times is pretty wild. But they're both, I would say, S class for sure for SR weapons. Okay, so that's right there. Now let's go over to the next S weapon. This wind rifle is nutty. Okay, let me show you guys why. So you guys can see here, the West Wind Damage is higher than most other weapons, first off, so you're going to be hitting way harder. The cooldown is actually pretty small for it. It is wind, which we don't have much of. And then if Secret Bullet hits when you are near no targets within a 5-meter range, so let's just say you're fighting a boss by itself, and you're far enough, 5 meters away, and the boss is casting something, you increase the user's damage by 75%. It's insane. It's crazy how much damage you do with this thing. And then at the same time, the effect of Secret Bullet at A1 goes up to 160% depending on the charge time. So wild amount of damage, guys, here. So increase wind damage by 8%. Of course, I don't have any of these here, so I'll have to do more testing on this, but increases the damage of Secret Bullet by 30%, stacking up to 5 times. When Secret Bullet fails, though, it does remove the stacks. Decreases the cooldown of Secret Bullet by 15%, and when landing a crit with Secret Bullet, decreases cooldown by 9 seconds. So you guys can see here, this weapon can pack a punch for an SR weapon, and it's absolutely worthwhile having. So that's going to also be an S-class weapon here for the SR list, okay? Next up here, we're going to do the Dragon Blood's power. So this is the Dragon Scale Broadsword, which increases the user's attack, which is kind of nice. So we'll talk here about it. It is a fire elemental, 968% of Jinwoo's attack. It does also decrease allies' damage taken by 30%, which gives you super armor when they're in the domain that this cast, and then it deals additional 100% of attack when attacking hits while in the domain. So if you stay in the domain, you're gonna first off get the super armor, the attack decrease of damage, and also gain yourself 100% of attack. Now, applies the Dragon Blood power effect to allies within the dragon domain, increases the user's attack by 12%. So this is really, really powerful when doing boss fights such as the dragon that we had yesterday, right? In the Battlefield of Power, I think that's what it's called. Increasing damage by 8%, increases area effect of the domain by 50% more, decreases the cooldown of Fire Dragon Slash, and then when the user uses Fire Dragon Slash within the dragon's domain, increasing the damage by 100%. Now, the reason why I'm covering SR weapons, guys, very important to note this. They are extremely, extremely powerful and useful. Okay? The reason why this gets A is because you rely a lot on the domain. If you're not in the domain, it becomes kind of a subpar weapon. Don't sleep on these SR weapons. They're actually really, really strong. Okay? I know a lot of people are not like even looking at them because they're SRs, but you should absolutely be looking at these. All right, guys, moving on to the next weapon here. The next one we're going to cover is going to be this blade right there. I forgot the name of it, though. Give me a sec here. Let me find it. It's on my list right there. It is the... Oh, there's Baraka's Dagger. That's it. Okay, so this one here is actually really, really good in regards to back attacks. It's pretty much like a rogue weapon. The only problem with this one is the fact is you are going to require Shadow Step quite a bit, and when someone is casting, to be behind them to do most of the skills. Now, the actual skill itself, just so you guys are aware here, let me just show you. If I go to skills right here, right, throws a dagger and teleports to the enemy, performs an X slash. So you can get yourself behind the opponent with this alone, but it's just very, very RNG. So that's why I want to make sure you guys understood that with this weapon. It does have really good effects. So for example, when Slayer of Vice is used, applies the nimbleness effect, increases the user's back attack damage by 30%. So if you are behind the user, you're doing a lot of damage. Now again, casting this and then shadow stepping is the best thing to do because you'll be behind and you'll do 30% more damage for 8 seconds. Or if the opponent is casting a long spell, something else you want to do right away is get behind them, right? So the effect of Slayer of Ice changes when this skill hits, the user teleports behind the target. So this is essential. You have to have this. For this sword, for this dagger to even work, A1 is a must. Like, outside of that, it's too much RNG. That's what I was talking about, right? But the moment you get to A1, this thing skyrockets in terms of its usability, right? So it is also wind damage. When the user lands a back attack, applies a surprise attack, which increases your skill, your crit hit rate by 20%. And then here you can see it decreases the cooldown as usual. And then lastly, increases the critical hit rate of surprise attack to 40%. When using Shadow Step, applies the nimbleness and surprise effect anyway. So now you've got a weapon that makes your Shadow Step even stronger. So this weapon, the only reason why I'm not going to give this an S, the only reason, guys, is because of the fact that it requires you to get dupes. Once you get dupes, this becomes a top tier weapon for S class. The problem is though, only because you require to get the A1, and not all free to play. This is going to be covering everybody, right? Not all free to play is going to be able to do that. It still gets an A. It's still a very powerful skill and weapon, but at the same time, you do require a couple of dupes. The very least, at least one. But definitely use it if you have multiple dupes of it, because it's going to do a lot of damage for you. Okay. All right. Next up on the list, let's see. We'll do the Demon Knight Spear. Okay. So here, let's go to that right now. So Demon Knight Spear, When Holy Spirit is used, applies Corrupted Spirit, removes the cooldown of Holy. So essentially, Corrupted Spirit removes the cooldown of Holy Spear, which is the move that you're doing. The user recovers 1% of MP. Light damage. It does Corrupted Spirit for 4 seconds. Decreases the cooldown. Overall, guys, not a very good weapon. I'm not a fan of it. I would never use this as one of my light weapons. So this one's going to go into Seek rank right now. That's right. The dagger's even better, believe it or not. All right, let's go on to the next one. Let's do the gun. Now, the unfortunate thing about Blackhawk is the fact that it kind of competes with 2 other SSR dark weapons, because there are 2 SSR dark weapons, so it doesn't really stand much of a chance. 680% of attack, 17-second cooldown. When the user is sliding and evading activated, it triggers the extreme evasion effect. When the extreme evasion effect is in effect itself, it applies the hunting effect, which increases the attack by 7 seconds, stacks up to 3 times. So a couple things with this to note, okay? When Hunting Hawk is used, the cooldown of Shadow Step Death is reset and activated, so this makes it very, very coveted for that alone. 20% for Shadow Step, 40% for Death, and 40% for Collapse. So it makes all your QTEs activate quicker, increases your dark damage, of course. The effect, of course, changes on it happening twice instead of just once. And then the last one here, when Hunting Hawk is used, it applies the Hunting Eye, so Hawkeye effect instead, increasing the damage of Collapse, Death, and Shadow Step by 30%. So if you're heavy on your QTE, this is a good gun to have, but unfortunately it does require a lot of dupes. And overall, because it's competing with 2 other SSR dark weapons, you're not really going to see much of this. So we're going to toss this one in C, because it does also require you to be very good at your QTE stuff, which either you're doing knockbacks, extreme evasions, or airbornes, right? So that's where that's going to sit. Next up, we're going to do let's do the book. The book. Here we go. So the Burning Demon's Grimoire, okay? So another fire damage weapon. So when Burst is used, it applies either Mana Point Fulfillment or Mana Point Thirst. These are 2 different things that happens on your user mana, okay? If the user's MP is 51% or higher, the effect is activated. When the user uses Burst, it increases their skill damage by 30%, but consumes 10% of the user's max HP. But if you have lower than 50%, it actually recovers your MP instead. So you can go back and forth quite a bit. This actually reminds me of the gameplay for Final Fantasy XIV for mages. All right, so A1, when the user uses Burst, Burst is activated again at the location where it explodes, so double the damage. So very powerful book there. Increases damage there by 8%. For fire, every A2 has that, by the way. A3, when the user's MP is above 51%, their attack increases equal to 60% of their MP. So that's very powerful there. And this is actually good for intellect spec, believe it or not. This will actually make you play intellect spec. And you can see here also increases your MP by 400 right down there. So this can be a unique way to set up Jinwoo if you plan to use them with intellect spec, but unfortunately it falls short of the other fire weapons, which is going to be this orb. So let's go find the orb real quick right here. So this one here is actually very powerful. It does 1008 damage, 17-second cooldown, increases the damage of Purgatory by 50% and increases your MP consumption by 10. Purgatory is the special move, by the way, that it does. At A1, when the user enters the stage, applies 20 stacks of Rage of Flame effect, increasing the cooldown of Purgatory by 5 seconds. And this increases the damage of Purgatory by 8% when the user uses Purgatory. 4 stacks are consumed. So you guys can imagine you can do quite a bit of damage fairly early. Duration is infinite, so that's a good thing there as well too. For A2 here, you get the fire damage. A3, recover MP equal to Raging Black Flame, stacks times 2 for every 3 seconds. That's one of the skills, by the way. This times 4 increases the cooldown, or sorry, decreases the cooldown of Purgatory. And then lastly, when the user enters the stage, you get 30 stacks instead of 20 stacks. And remember, every stack is 8% increase. So this is a very, very strong weapon. Pretty much going to be your S tier SR weapon for fire. Actually, you know what? Yeah, we'll keep it there. I think it's super powerful. I've been using it and loving it, okay? Let's move on to ice weapons because we don't have any listed yet. So this is going to be the Frostbite Falcon. When Bitter Cold Wind hits, it has a 20% chance to freeze the target. Believe it or not, that's fairly high with this effect. When Bitter Cold hits frozen targets, it also applies increased weakness attribute by 12%. So very powerful there. Increases water damage. The effect of Bitter Wind Cold can be stacked up to 2 times now. So it can be used 2 times. Bitter Cold Wind can be used 2 times rather than once. Decreases the cooldown by 15%, and then Erosion can be stacked up to 2 times. Erosion was this effect here we just talked about. So very, very strong weapon, guys, believe it or not. So again, another S tier weapon here for you for the SRs. And this will pretty much round up, I believe, all the SR weapons that are worthwhile having. The Golem weapon, it's all about defense, so I'm not a big fan of it. Actually, I haven't really taken a look at this blade, the Night Killer. So when telekinesis is used, inflicts the Night Killer effect, increases the user's defense penetration. So defense penetration up to 10 times. Decay deals damage equal to 40% of your attack per stack. Increases fire damage. Telekinesis applies a shield equal. Honestly, because I haven't tested it, this is actually pretty damn good. It's a pretty strong weapon. So I would say probably similar to Barak's, maybe a little higher. So probably around here. So you guys can see a lot of good fire weapons here available for you to consume. Now, the next one on the list is going to be this water weapon here, called the Naga Guardian Dragon's Trident. It's a mouthful. So when using basic attacks, it has 75% chance to create additional water explosions in front of the user. Very similar to what the book looks like, by the way. When using Naga Wave Cutter, creates an additional 3-prong water explosion. When using a core attack, creates an additional 3-prong water explosion. And overall, it's not bad, right? It just requires too many dupes to be too powerful, though. So this is going to get a C. Dark Sword. Let's see here. We got this one here, the Orcs Broadsword. So this one here is more of a defensive weapon, if I remember correctly. Applies Orcs Might. Orcs increases the damage of Orcs Broadsword by 40%. Okay, no, never mind. This is increasing its own power. This is, I think, where the shield. There's the shield. Okay. When the user uses Orcs Broadsword, applies the Orcs Body Armor, which gives you a shield, which is not bad. Increases dark damage. Also applies when landing a critical hit, increasing the chance of Orcs Broadsword landing a critical hit by 30%. So very strong there. Crit hit, by the way, is very, very important in this game, and I'll talk more about stats later. Decrease the cooldown of the broadsword by 15%, and then when Orc's body armor is applied while Orcs Might is active, the two effects are combined and changed to the High Orcs Prestige. The user creates a shield equal to 25% of their max HP. When applied for the first time, resets the cooldown of Orcs Broadsword and decreases the cooldown by 40%. So again, super strong sword. Does require a lot of dupes though to be powerful. So we're going to put that in the A section, and I believe that pretty much covers all of the SR weapons for our boy Jing. Okay, so Jinwoo's done. Let me actually remove these guys. Sorry, these guys shouldn't even be here. These are all of the R ones. Okay, we're gonna put these. So these SR weapons are the ones with no elements, guys. Belong to the hunters. Okay, so not Jinwoo. Okay, now going over to the SSR weapons. Keep in mind, okay, every single one of these are very powerful, like super, super powerful. We're going to do the worst ones, starting with the, this is tough, okay, and some people might not agree with this, but we'll start off with the Demon's Longsword. So I love this weapon with a passion. It's wind. It does great damage. The only caveat with this weapon is the fact that you do require to counter for its full effect. Okay, if you don't counter, you're kind of missing out a lot of the damage that you normally would do. So if I'm going to look into this right here, the Demon's Longsword, essentially what happens with the sword is it'll do crazy damage, but when you activate it, you have to counter. If you don't counter, you don't get the stun, you don't get the Storm of White Flames, which is a lot of the damage, but you do still get the shield. Okay, the White Flames, the reason why it's so important is increases the user's attack by 8%. Creates a lightning that deals 100% of the user's attack to nearby enemies for 10 seconds. You'll see a giant ring of lightning and just lightning beams dropping down. But again, you have to counter attack. So this is a very big a timing thing, right? This here, if you get the A1, inflicts the stroke of lightning effect to the same target every 5 attacks. So again, making this even more powerful at 50%. Increases wind damage. When using lightning, inflicts a storm of light regardless of the counterattack. This is where it becomes SS tier. Okay? If you can get A3, you're SS tier. Then you're now doing that no matter what happens. Decreases the cooldown by 20%. And then when lightning is used, depending on the success of the user's counterattack, additionally applies the Benediction of White Flames effect, which applies the counterattack, fails, creates a shield. When hit, stuns, you get all that jazz with it. Okay, so, and then you also do an extra 500% of the user's attack to nearby enemies. So that's what that is essentially. You have to counterattack and then you'll do that extra damage. So again, until you get A3, this is going to be an S tier weapon. All right, okay, moving on. Let's go with Vulcan's Rage. Okay, first SS tier weapon. Now, much slower attacking than the Demon's King Longsword, has a similar effect. The only biggest difference here, though, is the Vulcan's Rage is actually much slower, less power in terms of how much damage it does overall for the ultimate, but when the user does do this, it applies the Vulcan's Blessing, which gives you a shield. Okay, the shield is, I believe, a little bit lower than what this is. And when the user uses basic attack or core attack, it also applies concentration. This is where it gets fun. When the duration ends, the effect is removed. Vulcan's Blessing explodes and deals damage equal to 300% of the user's attack, stacking up to 30 times when it explodes. It deals additional 6% damage per instance of concentration. When Vulcan's Blessings explodes, it removes all concentration effect, and that is an infinite thing that it does, okay? Now, This is, I think, is a little better, easier to do than obviously the countering. Couple things to note here on A1, when Vulcans explodes, it applies rage, and this also increases your attack and your attack speed, which means you can stack this concentration a lot more often. Fire damage increase enhances rage here. You can see here now it goes up to 20% instead of 12, and then 10% attack speed instead of 6%, lasting 15 seconds, which is a long time, by the way. Decreasing the cooldown of Fire of Destruction, and then with Shield is active, damage of Fire of Destruction increases by 40%. Yeah, this weapon is much better. So a lot of people are asking about it. It's a very powerful weapon, guys. So because it goes one step above, and it has that ability to not have to counter, it gets the lowest end tier of SSR, for SS, sorry. Next one is going to be the Huntsman. A great range weapon. Unfortunately, the range is very small, just like every shotgun, so it's a little realistic. It does do quite a bit of damage, so we'll talk more about that in a second. Let's actually find it. There it is. So here's what it does: 1,108 damage, 25 seconds. It has also break. So one of the only weapons I believe that have break on it. When the user uses Judgment Time, which is the skill, activates their core attack. When the user uses Judgment Time, their core attack is changed to Time to Hunt for 6 seconds, increasing their damage by 60%. When the user's basic attack, core attack, or Time to Hunt hits target within 4 meters, increases damage by 50%. So again, you can do some insane damage, guys, especially with the last basic shot. When the last attack of Judgment hits, inflicts a Sunder effect to the target. If the target is in break state while the Sunder effect is activated, inflicts a Destroy effect. So this also increases the break effect by 25%. Destroy, though, increases damage taken by 8%. So if you break, take this bad boy out and start blasting. It'll do so much damage. It increases light damage by 10%. When the first attack of Judgment Time hit, it applies Halt. The skill interrupts the target's skills. Decreases the cooldown, and then Destroy effect now can do 16%, stacking up to 99 times. So a very strong weapon. It still is definitely S-Class. You guys are going to see a lot of these S-Class weapons sitting up here, by the way. I probably put this one, maybe right like this still, okay? Next up, the Scythe. Yeah, Scythe, you guys all know about it. You get 2 free copies within the game. Fairly straightforward. Very good crit damage, very good crit hit, good range. Overall, one of the best weapons in the game for sure. And the beauty of it is also it does something called Essence Harvest, which consumes 5% of your current HP and increases your skill damage by 100%. So if you get A1, if the user's current HP is below 70%, the Edge of Darkness effect is applied, which increases your crit rate by 25%. That's right, more crit, more damage. Increases dark damage by 10%. When current HP is below 60, recover 0.4% of current HP with each hit. So you got a life drain there as well. And then you get the decrease of Essence of Darkness. And then lastly, increases damage taken by 15%, but you also increase your attack by 15%. So can be a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde weapon, but still deserves SS up there. All right, 2 left weapons. I'm going to go with, this is going to be hard. These are my 2 favorite weapons in the game, okay? So this is essentially how this is going to look. Let's go ahead and do a couple different things. We're going to talk about these 2 weapons. This Grimoire is the best CC weapon in the game. The freeze is uncanny. The weapon is great. Amazing range. The bubbles pop. They kill everything. Easily one of the best weapons of the game. And then, of course, the Plum Sword is the best crit damage weapon in the game. Also has the best animation. So there you guys have it. I won't even go into those. You guys, if you guys don't know them, you should. That's the order of the best to the worst, in my opinion, right there. And then these are some of the SR weapons that I highly recommend going with. You know what? We're going to drop one down here. I think this is better. This is a better setup. Yeah, that looks a little better. And I'm going to drop this one down. Yeah, there we go. I think this is much better. Okay, guys, this is Payne. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Take care.